Scandinavian background?
I am.
Right. Okay. A few of us. I am too. On my grandmother's side, on both sides of the family. But there was a major time of immigration from Scandinavia to the U.S., really from the years 1840 to 1930, when 1.3 million Swedes immigrated to the U.S. and almost as many Norwegians. That's something I find particularly interesting because immigration is an interest and a concern of mine. And I find it interesting to realize whenever it dawns on me or whenever I run into it, that there are so many immigrants who have come here over the years and have made their impact on who we are together as a country. Much of the Swedish immigration during that rather long period of time ended up in Minnesota or around Illinois and into Indiana. And interestingly enough, and I'll leave it at this, one of the things I was not aware of is that there was a significant immigration of Swedes to Cuba at the very end of the 19th century. And it didn't last very long, but there was a fair number of them that came, although apparently there are almost none left. But the Swedes actually at that point became trilingual because they came with their native language and then learned English and then learned Spanish and became, in some cases, some rather wealthy farmers in Cuba. But I'll leave it at that in the way of tiny introduction. And who do I turn this back to? Les?
Yeah,
I'll just say that my great-grandparents immigrated from about 100 miles south of Stockholm. And I got to visit the church where my great-grandmother was baptized.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
that's interesting. My father was born
In connection with the Swedes in Cuba, Tom Lurston, Ken and Sonia's son, is trying very hard to get his visas to be the second in the diplomatic in charge of the embassy there in Cuba. So there's another Swede going to Cuba here.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Good, interesting. My father was born in Gothenburg, Sweden, which now I believe is not a farm area. It's the Volvo factory area. So that's interesting. The tie in both ways there. They immigrated to Minnesota and then went out to North Dakota later on. So there is connection for I think a number of in that way.
Oh, okay. One more Volvo thing to throw in here. Volvos, as you may know, are considered special, I guess, in terms of their safety and their length of life, the duration which they last. They have the specific distinction that in 1966, Volvo had built the first car that ran 1 million miles. And it was a P1800, which is a little sports car if you're familiar with it at all. But they won a bunch of awards and all this. But when that same car hit 2 million miles, they got a parade in New York City. So.
2 million.
Okay, Les, it's back at you.
Thank you. Now we've got to the point where we'll welcome Pastor Hal and Shirley, and Pastor Hal has a presentation to talk about his trips and activity in the Scandinavian countries. Hal, you got it.
Well, thank you very much. It's fun to be with all of you. So many familiar faces. You realize it's 29 years since we came to Albuquerque, which is mind-boggling for us. One more Volvo story to follow up on what Chuck said. It was, I believe, a Volvo engineer, at least a Swedish engineer, who invented the three-point seat belt that is now universal in all of our cars. You know, the shoulder belt and the lap belt with a single latch. And that too was a Swedish invention, which only further emphasizes the safety with which Swedish cars, Volvos and Saabs, have been noted in recent years. I am going to switch to share screen because I have a bunch of slides on PowerPoint that you will be able to view as I continue talking. So, you know, at some point or at the end we'll break and we can field your questions, but I'm going to switch to that. And just a second here, and I will find my PowerPoint and then share it. Okay, here we go. And go back here. Okay, are you seeing my screen? St. Luke Elders Live?
Yes.
It's
Okay,
on.
good. All right, we're in business. Well, Les asked me to talk about our experiences in the Scandinavian countries. And over the last 25 years, we have been back and forth so many times to both Sweden and Norway, as well as Denmark. We have also spent some time in Iceland, another of the Nordic countries, but we have never been in Finland. And while the Finnish language is very different, on this west coast of Finland, there are a number of towns and cities with Swedish background, and we talk about them as Swede Finns. And many of the Swede Finns immigrants ended up in northern Michigan. As Chuck mentioned, the populations of the Nordic countries really are quite small, especially in relation to their outsized influence on the diplomatic scene globally. These are rough numbers that I picked up from one of the current sources. Sweden is roughly 10 million, and Norway and Denmark and Finland roughly half the size of Sweden. And then you have little Iceland with 364,000. We have seen a program on the Faroe Islands, which is an interesting story in itself for another time. We have made several trips in recent years since 1996 or 7. But in some ways, my first trip was the most memorable trip. It was in 1948 for several months. You see, I am the only child of Scandinavian immigrants. And in those days, you could travel as a family on a single passport, which we did in that year, 1948, shortly after World War II. My mother had emigrated from Norway in 1923 at the age of 19. She was the only one of her family of 11 living siblings who came to the United States. All the rest remained in Norway. She came first to Tacoma, Washington, and then subsequently made her way down to California. She worked as a cook and a domestic during those early years. My father came from Sweden in 1928, came to San Francisco via the Panama Canal after he had finished his stint in the Swedish Army. I have his release from Sweden, ostensibly signed by the king, that permitted him to come. He had done an apprenticeship as a landscape gardener in Sweden, and he came to California, where he had one brother and some cronies who got together. And so during those early years, he was a Swedish party boy in the San Francisco area. We can talk more about immigration. As Chuck mentioned, the number of Swedes who came to the United States was in excess of 1 million. The numbers that are used are usually 1.25 to 1.3 million Swedes, roughly 850,000 Norwegians, and fewer numbers of Danes and Finns and Icelanders. I just finished reading recently a book on Swedes in Canada, which is a fascinating study, and I won't go into the background of how I happen to know some people involved with it. One of the interesting facets of immigration, Scandinavian immigration, is the number of people who returned to the old country after having been here for a while. I do not have the documentation for that, but I understand that a great-grandfather of mine actually did spend some time in the 1800s here in this country and then went back to Sweden. Oh, by the way, talking about folks coming in the 1800s, the earliest Swedes came to the United States in 1638 to the Philadelphia, Wilmington, and Western New Jersey area. The Swedish Colonial Society to this day maintains a roster of people who trace their heritage to that original immigration. They came, many of them, on a ship called the Kalmar Nickel. It means the key to Kalmar, which is one of the islands off the east coast of Sweden. If you ever have a chance to go to the Wilmington, Delaware area, there is a Kalmar Nickel museum and ship. It's run by a friend I've come to know in recent years, Sam Heed, and it's really worth visiting if you ever are in the Philadelphia or Wilmington area. My mother came from central Norway. Brønnøysund is about halfway up the coast, as you can see. That home place, and I apologize for the lack of clarity on this slide,
Very small.
is this was the home in which she was born. The family has lived there since the late 1600s, 1700s. Actually, a picture I took on one of our visits in the winter is a little clearer. This is the original farmhouse, and today it's a wonderful restaurant. The name of this place is Tilrem, T-I-L-R-E-M. It's about 10 kilometers north of Brønnøysund. That also happens to be my middle name. I was given that at birth. So that's my immediate connection to Norway. My folks, by the way, met in California in 1935, were married in 1936, and I was born in 1938. This 1948 trip we made was to see family from whom people had been separated during World War II. Here is Shirley and our son Kurt standing in front of the whole old home place. It has this mountain range right behind, so it's a rather spectacular spot. This little spot on the top at the left was used by the Nazis during World War II as a reconnaissance spot, so they could observe ship traffic going up and down the North Atlantic, because this is within half a kilometer of the sea. When we get together, we always like to eat, and eat good pastries, good food. This happens to be Hildur. She is married to my oldest cousin. Hildur and Torbjörn have visited us here in Albuquerque. But she had, by the way, the name of it now, Hildur's Urterarium, means Hildur's herb garden. And she has maintained a wonderful herb garden, and as well as a restaurant. Here is another sample of, our enjoying good food when we visit over there. At the end of the table here is my cousin Torbjörn, who is now 96 years of age and has outlived his brothers, and we hear from him periodically. Another example of food at Kilrum. This is our daughter-in-law who lives in Boise, and Shirley, with some marzipan. And this is a kind of lefse. It's called Hardanger lefse. Much of my Norwegian history, family history, is summarized in this gravestone. This is my Norwegian grandfather, Tøres Angel Hansen Tilren, who died many years before I was born, 1924. My grandmother, Johanna, who died in 1936. And then here are aunts and uncles who, some of whom died very early on. My uncle Turolf, whose name is at the lower right-hand corner here, visited us at least a couple of times here in the States, and we enjoyed his presence with us. Now, I'm bringing this back down south. This is an aerial photo of Oslo. It sits at the head of Oslo Fjord. Beautiful, beautiful city. One of the newest attractions in Oslo is the Opera House. You can actually walk all up on top of the roof. Yeah, it's quite a daring design. One question that I posed to Chuck was about the Nobel Prizes. The Nobel Prizes are given in Stockholm with one exception, and that is the Peace Prize. Alfred Nobel instructed that the Peace Prize should be given in Oslo, which it is every year. Sadly, though, this year the ceremonies will not take place. I have been part of a Swedish Council of America that annually sends a couple of students to the Nobel ceremonies. This year, while the awards will be given, the ceremonies have been canceled. Another magnificent city in Norway is Bergen, on the west coast. We have visited there on 2 or 3 occasions. I had 2 aunts and an uncle who lived out here on this peninsula of land, which is filled with apartment buildings and a wonderful aquarium at the end of the peninsula. Right down here at the head of this little inlet is this fish market, and I have memories from 1948 of going down to the fish market every afternoon with one of my aunts and picking up fish for dinner and having fisk og potatis, fish and potatoes. On this side of the inlet is this area called the Bryggan. The Bryggan are the remains of the buildings from the Hanseatic League, the trading league that incorporated major cities in Northern Europe back during the, I think it was 1600s and 1700s. Bergen was the home of Edvard Grieg, the composer, and Grieg is buried along with his wife. Their grave is kind of set into a cliff here in Bergen. A third city, the second largest city in Norway, is Trondheim. on the west coast. This is an aerial shot of the Nidaros Cathedral. This dates, it was finished about 1330. It took more than 100 years to complete that cathedral. It was one of the pilgrim sites of Europe back in the Middle Ages. It's just an absolutely magnificent building. It is the seat of the Church of Norway. Recently, Brad Ellingbo, our friend and former music director at St. Paul, had a video on Facebook of the St. Olaf Choir from Minnesota singing one of Brad's compositions here in the Nidaros in Trondheim. It was raised some goosebumps for us because we've been there and enjoyed that church in Trondheim. You know, one of the ironies of our travels is that we've never been to Stavanger. Stavanger is south of Bergen on the west coast, and it is in the oil capital. It's where so much of the oil activity that goes out to the North Sea originates, and we've just never had occasion to get down to Stavanger. Now, the coastal transportation system in Norway since about 1900, prior to the, of course, airlines and rail traffic, and rail traffic only goes a part way up the coast, is the Hurtigruten. Now, I know that Les and Deanne have taken the Hurtigruten. There may be others of you. It's a wonderful voyage. We, by chance, when we took the Hurtigruten, were on the Kung Harald, the King Harold. My mother would tell me that Harold, who was born a few months before I was one of those after whom I was named. So anyway, let's see here. I was going to show you, yeah, here's the route map of the Hurtigruten. Starting down here in Bergen and going all the way up over the top to the town of Kirkenes. There are 11 ships in the fleet that covers the coast. It's a 7-day trip from Bergen up over the top. It's just a magnificent trip to take. The entertainment, unlike most cruise lines, is not an active entertainment. It's more passive. It consists of the scenery that you behold. This marker out here, some may recognize. That's the marker of the Arctic Circle. And so that's one of the lines across which you travel. And I discovered the other day in going through some things that we were actually presented certificates with having crossed the Arctic Circle. Here was one of the better shots I ever got from the bow of the Kung Harald. When we got to the top, to Kirkenes, you take your choice on pronunciation, we were met there by one of my cousins and her husband. Her husband grew up there. This, would you believe, is the Russian War Memorial in Kirkenes. The reason it stands there is that it was the Russians who liberated the Norwegians from the Nazis in 1944, and not before some severe destruction had taken place. The Nazis burned over many of the towns in northern Norway. So there was gratitude to the Russians for that. The Russian-Norwegian border is right there. Oh yes, I skipped one slide, which is also at that border. That was a Norwegian soldier who was very happy to have his picture taken, guarding the Norwegian border from people who were want to go into Russia. We spent some days in Kirkenes, and then we drove south really the length of the country, and that took us a long time. It's a long drive from the north of Norway on circuitous roads all the way to the south. In the north, you will find reindeer. The Sami people are the indigenous people of the north in Norway, Sweden, and Finland. They have been known as the Laplanders, and their primary vocation, in fact, is reindeer herding, although many have now moved south to cities and are involved in the local economies. We sponge off of relatives all the way down. This is one of my cousins who lives in Trondheim and has worked in the university there. This is another cousin, Molfred, with whom we traveled, and they visited us here in Albuquerque. Olaf is my biking buddy. Olaf and I have biked in Germany and in Denmark and in Sweden and in Canada, and we've done a lot of fun things together. But here we are eating again. So yes, we have become very fond of the foods. I did a little recap of Norwegian history for you. You know, the Viking period, which the Vikings were from all of the Nordic countries. Norway was unified by King Harald the Fair-Headed. He was known as Harald Hårfagre. My mother also talked about him in relation to my name. I don't know how much to make of that. It was roughly the year 1000 when Christianity was introduced to Norway by Olaf Haraldsson. You may be familiar with the patronymic naming system, where if it is a son, you take the father's first name and add S-O-N or S-E-N. And so Olaf, son of Harald, who is, of course, known as Saint Olaf, and he is buried in the cathedral in Trondheim. There was another prior King Olaf Tryggvason, who just preceded him. For a period of time, Norway was united with Denmark more than 4 centuries. The Reformation came about 1537. Many of you know that May 17th is the Norwegian national holiday, the 17. Mai. It dates from 1814, which is the day that the Norwegian Constitution was adopted. And Norway was united with Sweden at that point. Norway had a considerable freedom and sovereignty, but it's nonetheless had this relationship with Sweden. Sweden took care of foreign affairs and military involvement. In 1905, not long after my mother was born, Norway regained its independence, and it was a Dane, I think, who was made king at that point, Håkon VII. Okay. My father came from the very south of Sweden, near Malmö. The town is Båstad. It's right on the sea, on the Kattegat. The home where he grew up is not in good shape today, although it's still standing. Here's a picture from an earlier time. His father was a blacksmith. Here's another not very clear scene from that area. The sea is just a short ways down from where my dad grew up. This was my Swedish grandfather, Jan Anton Nilsson. He died in 1965 on my birthday, so he's been gone a long time. His gravestone notes that he was a master blacksmith, J.A. Nilsson from Slattered, the village area. An earlier gravestone had the names of both my grandmother, who died in 1918 of the earlier pandemic, and of my grandfather's second wife. When they replaced the stone, they didn't put their names on. And that's, I think, oh my, patriarchy, no gender equality in those days. our family in that area is, I've got papers tracing us back into the 1700s. We could go further, but it was far enough. When we go there today, we have a lot of fun. We play. Here's our younger son and our daughter and a couple, well, there's one granddaughter and a son-in-law, and we were all having a midsummer celebration and enjoying their home and the friendship. More relatives. You see what their t-shirts say? Jakob and Martin and Mina are, let's see, they're first cousins twice removed. He worked for Tetra Pak, this company I mentioned. She is a student in Stockholm in the arts and dance, and Jakob is now a journeyman plumber. Here is a bungalow, one of my cousins. We enjoyed many stays in her home with her husband. Food, this is called fika. Some of you may know that Swedish word for coffee with pastries. When I was over there as a child, the standing rule was that when you served coffee, you had to have a minimum of 7 different kinds of cookies and pastries. So this was a beautiful summer day, as you can see, a few years ago. The major city, of course, of Sweden is Stockholm. It's a city of on an archipelago of islands. This area here is known as the Old City, Gamla stan. You have the parliament, and on the other side you will have the palace, the Slott, as it is called, and just off to the side here on the edge of the water is the Stockholm City Hall, where the Nobel ceremonies are held every year, and where pictures are often taken of the Nobel laureates, and those appear in magazines and papers worldwide. Stockholm is a fun city. There is an island, a park out here called Skansen, an open air park. Wonderful place to visit. One of the artifacts out here is the Vasa, the ship that sailed about 500 yards on its initial voyage back in, what was that, 17 something, 16 or 17 something. I'm sorry I didn't pull up any pictures of the Vasa. It sat at the bottom of the harbor for hundreds of years. It sank because it was top heavy. It had, they'd loaded all the, or put all the guns up in place. They sailed it out of its boatyard and it tipped over and sank. So, there is a canal that cuts across the country. It's called the Göta Canal. It was built by soldiers digging by hand back in the middle 1800s. And it was to be a means of communication and transport. And of course, with this width today, it functions about like the Erie Canal in this country. There are pleasure boats that make their way along the canal, but that's about it. So you can go from Göteborg or Gothenburg on the west coast all the way across just south of Stockholm. Olaf and I spent some days biking on the path along the canal some years ago. The seat of the Archbishop of the main church of Sweden is the Cathedral at Uppsala, which is about 40 miles or so north of Stockholm. Again, a cathedral that dates way, way back. And I had to put in this St. Luke connection. Some of you will, of course, remember Bill and Selma Courier.
Oh, yeah.
Bill and Selma went with us on a trip in 1997. And one of the places we stopped was the cathedral in Uppsala. And that, by the way, for those of you on that trip may remember, was where Selma fell and dislocated her finger. And it was really kind of a bad injury, but anyway, she survived. When Bill Courier came into the Uppsala Cathedral, and came to this gravestone. It was as if his life journey was complete. Carl Linnaeus is, or Caroli Linnaeus is Carolus von Linnaeus, the one who devised the system for naming all plant life, the botanical naming system. And Bill, of course, was a botanist and had worked for, was it the Department of Agriculture or Fish and Wildlife? Anyway, we could have gone nowhere else in Sweden, and Bill would have, his life would have been complete having seen the gravestone of Linnaeus. I just threw in a picture of a friend who was on the staff at the cathedral in Uppsala. Paul Nelson was a classmate in seminary, a couple of years ahead of me, and served the parish in Sacramento, met a Swedish girl, married, moved to Sweden, changed his membership, became a priest of the Church of Sweden, and ever since has been, and learned Swedish well enough to preach in it, and ever since has been on the faculty on the staff of the cathedral there. The second church of major importance in Sweden is the cathedral in Lund. Lund is down just north of Malmö, way in the south of Sweden. Some of you may remember from October 31st of 2016 when Pope Benedict made a trip to Sweden to celebrate the Reformation, the 499th anniversary of the Swedish Reformation. I like the kid to say that it's probably the only time that a pope in human history has worn a red stole on Reformation Day, which Benedict did. He was welcomed by the Archbishop Antioch Lane, whom we have gotten to know a little bit. But it was a magnificent occasion if you watched any of the live stream or the aftermath of that papal visit to Lund. The roots of the Swedish church in this country begin with a pastor named Lars Paul Esbjörn. Esbjörn came from Sweden to Illinois, to Andover, just east of Moline, and was pastor of the church there. There is a Jenny Lind Chapel at Andover. And then he returned to Sweden, but he was present for the formation of the Augustana Synod in 1860 in Wisconsin. Augustana, of course, became part of the LCA in 1963, and then we joined it and became the ELCA in 1988. We have had an Augustana Heritage Association, it went on for about 16, 18 years, and I had the privilege of being the final president of the Augustana Heritage Association when we relived some of this history. Another early pioneer of the Augustana Synod was Eric Narelius, who is remembered with this marker in a graveyard, and I have to go back and check to see which one of the parishes. Now, I'm sure some of you recognize this name, if you can read it on screen. Lina Sandell. How many thousands of times have you sung, Children of the Heavenly Father? Day by day, thy mercies, Lord, attend thee. There are others in our hymnal. Lina Sandell was this marvelous composer who grew up out in the country. Her father was a pastor. Tradition has it that she spent time sitting in the crook of this tree, composing some of her hymns when she was a younger girl before she moved on to Stockholm. We have her picture taken in front of Lina Sandell's tree. I took this in one of the churches we visited. I'd have to track which one. But can you imagine having the list of pastors in a parish from 1585 to 2006 with only brief interruptions for, I assume, interim pastors? but you will find this in many churches. And another feature that you will find in virtually every Swedish church is this prayer orb, where you have the chance to light candles as you offer prayers for whatever purpose. A very brief recap of Swedish history. The visit of Ansgar back in the 9th century. We were in Ireland and Scotland last year, and we had reminded several times in museums and elsewhere about the Vikings' impact on that area. Well, these were the Vikings who set off to plunder and trade, and in some instances to settle in and make a contribution to the local societies. Here is this union that did go on for several centuries, incorporating Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. Gustav Vasa, the earlier Swedish king. You will recognize the name perhaps Gustav Adolf, otherwise Gustavus Adolphus, college named by that name in Minnesota. You mentioned earlier Ken and Sonia Lurston's son who was applying for a diplomatic position in Cuba. He graduated from Gustavus Adolphus with our daughter in 1986. Our granddaughter this year is crossing a line by going to St. Olaf instead. Syttende Maj is the Norwegian holiday. The 6th of June is the Swedish National Day. It is not as big a day in Sweden as the Norwegian Day is for that country, but it marks the election of Gustav Vasa back in 1523. Just a thought about the rapid industrialization, so many things that Swedes invented, like the ball bearing, for example, which becomes the basis for so many industrial applications. The Samis were granted their own parliament in 1993, where they have considerable say over their area, which again covers northern Norway, Sweden, and Finland, and even moves into Russia. Sweden is a member of the European Union. Norway is not. Sweden, however, decided by a fairly decisive vote, whoops, where did I go with that? Not to join the Eurozone. It does not use the euro currency. There's so much more that could be said about history. Animals seen in many places in Sweden. Elk, known as elg in Swedish.
They're big.
Yeah. And one more about our partying in Sweden. This is down back in Båstad on the beach, about 8 or 10 blocks from where a cousin lives. And I see my time is just about running out, and so we're doing pretty well. I threw in this because there may be those of you who have read Wilhelm Moberg or Moberg's immigrant series of 4 books that he wrote in the 1950s in Swedish and were translated, and they whoops, come on back here. Immigrants Onto a Good Land, The Settlers, and The Last Letter Home. It follows a couple, Carl Oskar and Katrina, with the last name Nilsson, Nilsson, as they emigrated from Sweden to the Stillwater area, Chisago Lake in Minnesota. That's a series worth reading. I want to just hold up one more book and then shut up. But let me close the PowerPoint. Okay, and here I am. A fairly new book by a Swede is called Swede Hollow by Ola Larsmo. It's about an area in Minneapolis settled by immigrants. back in the early 1900s. Very interestingly, the translator of this is Tina Nunali. Tina Nunali happens to live on Arroyo del Oso, around the corner from us, about 3 blocks. Yep, she's a neighbor, Dick and Myra. Tina, I have had a chance just to meet her one time. Her late husband also was a translator, but she is an award-winning novelist and translator, and I did not discover who she was or where she lived until I was given another book that she had translated this past December. Okay, I'm going to shut up, and it's question time, or do what you'd like. There's several other discussion topics that you're welcome to raise.
I've got a question about that special lefse. I'm used to lefse as we see it in North Dakota, Minnesota, and so forth, but that looked different. And when we were in Norway and asked them about it, they didn't talk about the same lefse that we talk about. Maybe you could expand that.
The lefse that we are familiar with, of course, is potato lefse. It's a very thin lefse, and it's often eaten, with butter or lutefisk. The lefse that you saw on that plate was called, well, it was hardanger, but it was krina lefse, which is a comb lefse. And as I watched my mother make it, it used a very thin dough, like a very thin pancake dough. And once it had set a little bit, you ran a comb across it. And the way that I experienced it as a kid was always with butter, sugar, and cinnamon.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
That was our children's favorite food from Grandma Torlok.
Me too.
I have a question on Norway. Norway is, I think, known for the country of fjords. How many fjords, prominent fjords, are there along the western coast of Norway? Any idea?
I cannot give you a number. I do know that if you were to stretch out the coastline of Norway, it would measure something like 4,600 kilometers. It's in and out and in and out. And I know that the longest fjord that goes in is Geiranger Fjord, which is between Bergen and Ålesund. And that goes inland, as I remember the statistic, virtually 200 kilometers, or about 120 miles inland. And of course, those steep mountains that come down into a fjord.
Yeah.
We used to kid about they're having a special breed of cow on the farms that's perched on the side of these mountains, where one leg would have to be longer than another for the cows to walk. Because there are these little farms on these steep slopes.
Mm-hmm.
Go.
Yeah. So do you know if, in this country, like religion is kind of on the downslide of people, it's not the latest thing to do, and Christianity is not necessarily growing. Is that true in Sweden and Norway, or are they staying more in their tradition?
No, they have preceded us in their secularization, if you will. The latest statistic I saw was that maybe only 8 to 10% of the population ever goes to worship. But the social service agencies still are very important in the life of the church. The Swedish church disestablished in the year, I think it was 1999. And so that church membership became voluntary. Now, the flip side of that is that the church still maintains the cemeteries. And so that something like 60 to 70% of the population still pays their church dues or tax, if you want to call it that, voluntarily. And what that gives them is access to the church at the time of the funeral. Yeah, you can. Yeah, I had one sign where we had the charges posted on the front of the church for baptism, weddings, and funerals. No, it's a very secular society. One of the interesting things that we did here a few years ago is that there are more choral societies, choirs, choruses in Sweden than there are parishes. Choral singing is still a very popular activity. The church in Norway has loosened its relationship to the government. It's still more closely tied than the church in Sweden. Here is a tangent. A few years ago, I was in Philadelphia, actually for a Swedish Council of America meeting, and I had a day and went to the Constitution Center on the mall in Philadelphia where, you know, the Liberty Bell is and all. And that Constitution Center has the constitutions of every nation in the world available digitally. And I looked at the Norwegian Constitution, and I think it's even in the preamble that Norway is described as a Lutheran country, or that the national religion of the country is Lutheranism. The churches that probably are making more headway are the evangelical churches. Now, we could talk about the Covenant Church, which was originally the Mission Covenant Church, or the Swedish Covenant Church that split from the Church of Sweden about 1880, 85, and represented the kind of the pietistic movement. Shirley grew up in the Mission Covenant Church in this country. We were married in that church. North Park University in Chicago is the college or university of that church. The church is there. It's still kind of a part of the society, but in terms of an active worship life, that's minimal.
It was interesting a couple of years ago when we were there that some of the younger children of relatives were of confirmation age, and they make a big deal of confirmation, and they send out elaborate announcements and have big parties. But they also do in Norway, you can have your choice of a religious confirmation or a secular or a cultural confirmation. And it just astounded me.
It was kind of a rite of passage to adulthood.
Yeah.
So, you know, there's one phrase I meant to mention earlier. When we were in Stockholm a few years ago, we heard a wonderful scholar, H. Arnold Barton, who was originally from Los Angeles, and he taught in Illinois, but he retired in Sweden. His wife was Swedish. And he made this comment. He said, you know, a distinction between the United States and Sweden is that Swedes trust their government. And that has really struck me, and I've tried to pay attention to that as I've read about Swedish politics. And of course, there has been an upheaval in the last few years in Sweden with the rise of, what are they called? The Sweden Democrats, I guess it is the right-wing party. And yeah, that they've been on the anti-immigration side, but Sweden and Norway have done yeoman effort with immigrants.
Talk about our experience in the train station.
Yeah. Well,
one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the words, the Scandinavian words, and how they're really pronounced. We got a list that's too long, but I'm wondering if maybe you could go through the first 4 or 5 of those, and then
I can fake it less because my parents adopted the immigrant attitude that in America you speak English. And so while I, learned enough as a 9-year-old to kind of get along with my cousins, we never pursued it in this country. So I am in no way bilingual. But I have a couple of your lists, starting out with good morning. Yes, maybe it's the same list. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. But when people greet each other today, you won't hear that very much. It's like, hey, hey, hey. It's H-E-J, H-E-J. And so you just say, hey. And then when you depart, instead of adieu, the frequent farewell greeting is, hey da, hey da. And that's a much more colloquial one. But yes, of course, ja, nay. And for please in Swedish and Norwegian, it's snälla du, or ver så snill. Tak is thank you. You can say tack så mycket, thank you very much. Or in Norwegian, you'd more likely hear mange tack, many thanks, or tusen tack, 1,000 thanks. You're welcome is varsågod. And then, excuse me.
What about Jesus loves you on the bottom there? Is that
Jesus älskar dig. Jesus älskar dig. To say you love someone. Jag älskar dig. I have to say this, we hit 60 years this Friday. So, yeah, we were mere children. We had to be. Yeah. Good night. Good night. Yeah. Or
Goodbye.
well, yeah, hey da, or adjö. Adjö. Yes, you might say we remain rather immersed in it. As a consequence of my involvement with the Augustana Heritage Association, I also became a member of the board of the Swedish Council of America, and we have made a major shift in the last year, but I ended up becoming acquainted with particularly Swedish organizations in this country. If again, we ever get to the point of traveling, there's some marvelous places for you to see around the country. If you ever get to Seattle, there is a Nordic museum with a brand new $40 million building in the Ballard area of Seattle. Wonderful, wonderful exhibits. Minneapolis, you may have connections in Minnesota. The American Swedish Institute on Park Avenue has been there for generations. But they have a new building with a wonderful restaurant called Fika. And an old mansion to tour. Chicago has in Andersonville, where Sonia and Cannon grew up, there is the Swedish American Museum. In Philadelphia, there is the Swedish American Historical Museum that goes back about 90 years. Wonderful displays, and they have lots of things from the colonial immigration period. I mentioned the Kalmar Nickel in Wilmington, Delaware.
Well, great. My birthday is May 17th, and I know that in Seattle, they really do celebrate the Norwegian Independence Day. And so my relatives up there say, you should come on up here and celebrate your birthday because it's kind of statewide. So that's one item. Judy, did you have anything as we're getting ready to go to snacks and maybe point out the various foods that might be appropriate for a Scandinavian person to have?
That was your job to point out these foods. I got the list.
I got a batch of them. I can point them out. And
can anybody say anything about the festival of St. Lucia.
Oh,
Major Swedish holiday, December 13th. It was originally an Italian holiday, St. Lucy, but Santa Lucia, where the young girl, young daughter of the family, wears a crown with burning candles in the old days and a white gown
with the red sauce.
and a red sash, and brings bulla, you know, these fresh baked cardamom buns to the family. We've done a Santa Lucia festival with the Scandinavian club here locally. But yeah, that and a summer crayfish party is another tradition. You have a great list of, let me mention one more thing in relation to foods. You've got a wonderful list of places where you can find some Scandinavian delicacies. There's one I'd want to add to the list. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Eurozone. Eurozone is a little market on Osuna. It's down the road west from Calvary Chapel. It's in the same strip mall as Whiting Coffee. If any of you have ever gone to Whiting Coffee. But 2 or 3 years ago, Ben Lars Lear and I were on the bike, and we stopped by the place, and I asked her about, you know, having some Scandinavian things, but most of them were Central and Eastern European. Well, as a consequence, she has ordered and keeps in stock most of the time Norwegian goat cheese, Geitost, which is the brown caramelized cheese. You can find a similar thing at Sprouts and Ski Queen, but we get the blue wrapper at Eurozone. Plus, she has pickled herring and some other goodies. So,
Does she have lutefisk?
Mhm.
Does she have lutefisk?
No, you know, Norwegians pronounce it lutefisk, and in Swedish it's lutfisk, no E. The last we had it, we got it sent from Minneapolis.
We picked it up.
Yeah, well, we picked it up in Minneapolis, yeah.
One summer, I went back to North Dakota for a visit, and my sister had lutefisk in July, just because I was there.
My grandmother used to cook it every Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
I can tell you a heartwarming story. I don't know how many stories you have time for. One Christmas when I came home from Bethany College in Kansas, my father always had lutefisk ready for us, but one year he ran out. He did not soak out enough at Christmas time. When I returned home in late May for the summer vacation, the first meal I had was lutefisk. He had prepared some. That was a father's love for his son.
Good. I've got some examples of food that the Scandinavian people participate in that we can get here in town. This is a crisp bread, and that I got from Eurozone. I was over there looking for cheese, could not find the Geitost cheese over there, but I'll be back.
On Friday.
And we have then the crisp breads, as you can see, like this. One is the pie shape that I just showed you, and the other one that you can get almost every place in town is wasa. And so if you're looking for what we used to call flatbread, and now they're calling crisp breads, I think more so, we can have that. And with cheese, the cheese that that Dan is opening up for us is Haverty cheese. And again, you can find that in quite a few places. And I think there is a listing of the locations in our setup. That cheese looks like it's a light colored cheese, but there are 3 or 4 different versions of that kind of cheese that I saw. So you can get that. And of course, if you're going to have lunch, you have to have herring. This herring I got at Albertsons, therefore it's very available. This herring is one I used to get all the time, and this came from Smith's, I believe. So there's a lot of opportunity to find the foods here. another cheese spread. If I got that upside down, another cheese spread is snowfisk on that. So those are the kinds of things that you can get here in town and have for snack, and they're kind of snacky. I wanted to show one thing that was part of my youth, and this is krumkaka. This is our krumkaka iron, and as you can see at the bottom, the krumkaka is cooked like a flat, like a flat. But it's a sweeter one, and it has a pattern on it. And when it's warm, you roll it using the rolling cone, and you roll that, and then it gets hard and it's crisp, and it's kind of like an ice cream cone, but it's not. You don't fill it with ice cream. It's very crisp. One day, when I was going back to work late one evening, while I had a whole bunch of these I was bringing back for the people I was working with, and they could eat. And I came to a stop sign, I had to stop too fast, and they all dropped on the floor. And guess what? They crisp and they crunch. Yes, and so we did many, many, many pieces of krumkaka that one day.
Excuse me, Les, did you say the cheese you liked or from there was Havarti?
Yes, let me show you that again. There are, can you see if you can read that?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and when some of the places, I suspect that Eurozone probably has almost every version that you want. They have a lot of cheese choices, but some of the other places like Albertsons, you can find that particular type of cheese too. So those are the examples that I have, and I don't know whether anybody else had any other thoughts on it. So
I couldn't find the wassabi this morning. I was late getting my shopping done, but I do have some Havarti to eat, and I'm eating it on Triscuits because.
Oh, you're forgiven.
Okay.
Well, we always have a lot of fun going grocery shopping in Sweden because, among other things, the cheese sections are just mammoth. I mean, you have so many selections to choose from, and so that and breads. Oh, the breads and the fish. Yeah.
We wanted to also show, I have a few pictures of my trip on the Hurtigruten, and we wanted to show a couple of those while we were snacking, and I think Judy has those, and we'll show them and I'll talk about them. Will that work?
Yep, it will.
Then I can chew my crisp bread while I'm showing those off. This is a Hurtigruten, and I'm going to, I have a Hurtigruten hat, but I don't have it near me, and it gives me the name of the ship that we were on, which is not that. But on to the next one here. This story here is the maids and the workers and the cooks are all part of a large families that worked on these various ships. But they don't work on the same one. They work on, their sisters and brothers working on the other ones. When they pass each other, remember there are 11 ships in this one. When they pass each other, they all go out and wave sheets at each other so they can greet their sister or cousin, brother, or whatever. So it's a little fun to back off and watch this while they are greeting somebody that they know from the other ship. And the next, I've got some pictures of churches. I tend to take pictures of churches when I travel. This is a Stavish church. Stave is in English, but the Scandinavian name is Stavi. There are a lot of them, and there are some that are very spectacular, not as small as this one. You can go online, Google Stave churches, and you'll see a lot of them that are elegant. not only older churches, there are a number of beautiful new and modern churches in Norway as we go on up. And these, of course, were all the ones that were close enough to the water so we could get off the ship, walk up to them, or take a short drive to them and see them. Pastor Hal may be familiar with some of these too.
Yes, this is known as the Arctic Cathedral. It's in Tromsø. And Tromsø is the largest city in the far north of Norway, 60, 70,000 people. It's a really beautiful city with medical facilities and a university. So.
Yeah, and here's another one, again, very modern. This, I don't remember just where this was, but again, this was on its way on up north. And again, it's a beautiful architectural building. Some interiors, on to the next one, some interiors have some beautiful glasswork in them. And I was able to take, a decent picture of this one. I think we got a good picture of this one. I had other ones where sometimes the view wasn't quite the same, but we were able to see this from the inside. The other thing I wanted to point out was Norway has got beautiful bridges. They are not only very, very useful, but they are architecturally very beautiful. This one that we saw from a distance, and there were the next one, which was even more beautiful. I think we just came underneath that one. I got that one from the back of the ship. Okay, the ship that I was on was the MS Norwegian, and I've got my.
That was the last picture I had. Oh, there you are. Okay.
That's the last one. Yeah, and you can see that I've still got my Hertegruten cap from Nordic, and I wear it at the appropriate times, like right now. and Judy, you had some too.
Yeah, so we're going to have to unmute Lorna, because these are some slides that, thank goodness, I wrote notes on from when Lorna and I were on the same cruise in 2012. So this picture shows you where we were traveling, and I have some things from Stavanger. Is that how you say it? I think that's the place I decided to show you pictures from. So this was in 2012, and this was the cathedral there. Several views of it as we were getting ready to go into it. And here's an inside picture. It's not great, but it says that it was the best preserved medieval cathedral at the time in 1125. So if I had just not written this, I would not remember what it was. Do you agree, Lorna? So this, I think, is the organ in that cathedral. I usually take pictures of organs if I can find them. Lorna, you're supposed to just jump right in there. You're muted, Lorna. Unmute yourself.
Not here.
Can she find her unmute button? There you go. Now we can hear you. Yes, Lorna.
Yeah, but I'm seeing myself. I want to see your pictures.
Well, why are you not seeing the pictures? Let's see.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Is everyone else seeing the pictures?
Yeah.
I don't know where you are.
Yeah? Okay.
I'm seeing your pictures.
Oh, I'm sorry then. So this one is also.
Now I'm back.
Okay,
I'm
good.
back.
Okay, this is still in that same cathedral, just taking various pictures. You can get a little bit over here on the side of seeing the pulpit, just the top part of the pulpit. And here's a better view of it.
I know. Very ornate.
Very ornate.
Oh, beautiful.
And then I just like these because they look like the same place we put hymns up on the hymnal board, right?
Right.
I wonder if these churches survived the Blitzkrieg from Germany in World War II. You know?
You know, I don't remember that these were restored, but I'd have to go look that up. That was the bad thing about these. If I don't write a lot of notes on the slides later on when I go to look at it, I can't remember the history, but I probably brought back books. That's why Lorna's supposed to be here in case she remembers some detail of it.
Oh,
so.
gosh.
And then gorgeous stained glass. Lots of ornate
Look at that.
decorations inside that cathedral.
During the war,
Huh?
Hitler used to bomb all the churches and everything.
So this is still the outside of that. And then I have some pictures from a walking tour we took just of that old, the old harbor town. And I think we were very impressed with the gorgeous flowers. That's no one we know. Just, you can't take a picture without someone being in the picture, and you couldn't get them out of the way. So, but you see the kinds of cobblestone streets, and it was really quite beautiful. And beautiful flowers. And there was our ship as we were getting ready to walk back to the ship. And look at that clematis. There's Anita in there. Do you see her, Lorna? Anita's my husband's aunt who lives here in Albuquerque too. So just beautiful flowers. And then we went to Gravdal, and again we visited an old, of course, Lutheran church. So this had some of the, for some reason I wrote this down, which is really glad that I did this. So this says it's the Flakstad church, and it was built out of the wood brought in from Russia. So of course it was ruined and then rebuilt, but we did get to go inside. It was very small. But it had some of those, you saw these a lot, the ships hanging, which are supposed to be depicting in the nave to show from navigation, the journey of our life toward God. So we saw those in a lot of churches that we visited.
Right.
And there, of course, is the scenery as we come out of there. And this was in Sund. And you'll see the dried cod. We saw a lot of dried cod in the area. And this is where, this is a paper cormorant that Lorna's actually holding that there, but the Smithy there was making some out of iron. They were beautiful. And
I still have it.
Do you? Okay, good.
Oh yes, of course.
And the houses in these little fishing villages were apparently color coded. So the owners was white, and then the fishermen houses were red, and ochre for the other buildings were just somehow to make you think that the village has more wealth than it maybe did. But and there are kittiwakes. We saw lots of kittiwakes, and of course beautiful flowers.
Beautiful. Petunias?
Those are pansies, right?
Pansies.
Yeah. This is or, isn't that what the A with the little umlaut or? I think how you say it. Yeah, okay.
And
there's Lorna.
The name of this.
Your last picture was from the Lofoten Islands. The Lofotens are north of Buda on the west coast. It's a fishing area. This may have been, well, there were a couple of major towns on the Lofoten, but it's a fishing place. In fact, my grandfather with colleagues would fish in the winter in the Lofoten Islands. You can imagine being in the dark virtually 24 hours a day.
Yeah, right. Let's see. And now, see, this is where I don't remember. We're overlooking some lake. Maybe Hal will recognize this. And there's me and my husband in front of that same lake. And there's Lorna and Larry's aunt, Anita. there. And then we were in Tromsø. And then I have some of that same thing as the Arctic Cathedral. And I just thought it was interesting that I took a picture of the organ inside there. I did have a picture of the stained glass window too, but I think I left it out since Les already had a good picture of that. And this is one of those candle orbs. What did you call this? A candle orb, I think?
Yes, it's an orb. It's, as you saw, they are in churches everywhere.
Yes.
You know, it's, I mean, Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox practice has been to have, you know, prayer places where you can light a candle. This is the Scandinavian, and I think more beautiful expression of that.
And of course,
And it represents the world.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, that's the whole idea, right? Okay, thank you, Lorna. And then, of course, at the time, I think I was in the process of making paraments for the church, so I took pictures every chance I got of ideas. So this was a beautiful piece of parament there. And that's kind of it on my slides. So Lorna and I had a great time on that trip.
Yes, we sure did.
Okay, if we're done snacking now, I think it's time for crafts. And Judy, you're probably going to have to help us a little on those crafts.
Yes, that was the idea. Is to make a card that looks like this on the outside, if you can see mine. And on the back side, you have a place that has the story of what these are supposed to be and the fact that it was made. It'll be blank on the inside. And our plan is to make a series of these that we're going to then take to our homebound people with some stamps so they have things that they can actually send cards to people. So I gave you in the packet, if you didn't pick up your packet, you can still pick it up from the office. But in the packet, you have 2 sheets that are just 2 different colors of things like this, and you just cut them out.
Yes,
So that's all I did with this one so far is just cut it out.
please do.
So if you have yours, you can kind of follow along with me. I'm going to do a little of it. So you just, once you get them cut out, just fold them in half. So they look like this. Now, there were good instructions, I think, in here for you to follow along with. But so once you have them cut, folded in half, all you have to do is cut along the lines, making things that you can weave. There's one. See, you have little things to work with. And on this one, now I hope you will do these, and then at the end of this whole process, we'll get them back to the church, or if you want to use them for your own benefits, give them to others. You don't have to bring them back to the church, but we will deliver some to the homebound. So now you're going to weave these together so that you end up with a heart. See if I can turn my camera down. You can.
I've got one right here that looks like it should look, I think.
Yes, you do.
Oh.
The trick to it is just going in and out. So like I put one in here, you can see that the dark one is on top of the light one. So for the next one, I have to have the light one on the top. So that means I got to come down here and feed it through that opening. Now I have one light and one top. And then you just got to keep going through that. This one, when every time it's on top, you've got to feed it through the other one so they don't just fall apart. I'm feeding it. I'm so good at this. That even if you do have arthritic hands, which I do, it's possible to do. So here you go. See, now my next one's through. And then my last one needs to have this one on the top. So I feed it through. The secret is to keep them down close to the bottom where you're feeding before you start bringing it up. See, there's my first row through.
Yeah, okay.
So when you start into your next one, you got to start the other way. So now I need the light one on top. So I'm feeding the light one through. Oops.
There's 2 sets, there's 2 envelopes. Okay.
So I gave you enough to do 2 envelopes and 2 hearts.
Yeah.
But then you also have a sample one that if you want to make some more in another color, you can do that. So when I start to do this next one, I'll eventually get my hand in there. You can see I'm starting to put it the other color on the top. So you just got to keep track of which color you want on top, and that's the way you're going to feed it. And since I don't see any of you all working on it, I'm going to stop doing it and just show you what you do at the end. I mean, if you were staying with me, we could do this. But I do encourage you to make this. See, I've started.
I did mine last night because it took me an hour.
Yeah. When you get done making it, you just glue it onto the front of your card.
Just
Uh-huh.
just a little bit of glue on the back side of the back one, right?
Yes.
Just a couple of spots because you have to open this up. It has to open up so that there's room in it.
Well, you don't have to do that for this, but that's fine.
Yeah. So
that's the idea, is that they were.
There's space in there if someone wanted to tuck a note in there or whatever.
It's a good idea. And then the handout you got here originally that had your foods list, there are these 2 rectangles, and you just cut them out because that describes what a Scandinavian heart was, and you just cut that out and glue it onto the back of the card, and that lets anybody know that received the card what this is supposed to be. And then you could just write your own notes to send it to whoever you want, or bring them back to the church office at the end of everything. Wait, we're not in a hurry. And then we will put together packs of these cards made up from each of our 4 sessions with stamps to give to our homebound. Yes, Daleen.
Judy, when can we pick up those packets? I didn't know whether Angie's always there or if there's certain times, so I didn't go up there.
Oh, okay. No, she isn't always there. Of course, this week she is there pretty much all the time because the pastors are gone. So you just need to contact Angie and find out when she will be there. So we'll always have these packets out before each of the in-person services on Saturday and on Sunday. And then after that, they will be with Angie on Mondays. And she'll keep them so you can pick them up later. So if you didn't get it, you can come and get it.
Okay.
The thing is, already have the cards and envelopes in there, so you don't have to buy any of that, and the templates are already there for you.
I picked mine up yesterday and they were still in the library. So.
Yes, she's I went over there yesterday to check on it too, and she just left them in there, but you still need to contact her so you can get into the church, because the church is not generally open. But I would just send her an email or call her and ask her. Okay?
Where's this under the back?
But we will have them on the weekends, and not if you're going to service even. You can show up before service, and someone will be there to show you where they are in the library or the lounge. And on Sunday, the same way, we're going to be there early, so they'll be there if you want to come pick up your next packet or the previous packet. So they'll be there so you can pick them up and be ready. Does that answer your question, Daleen? Okay, so just contact her about that. So you're supposed to do these. Now remember that if you went to Vacation Bible School as a child, which I hope most of you did, one of the things that was important is we always sang songs and we always made a craft, right? And usually you did some kind of service project. So this is a combination. You are doing a craft and it's a service project because you're going to give it to someone who could really use it. Okay? Well, I'm going to quit talking.
Judy, is it possible?
Who's speaking to me?
Can you hear me?
You're
Betty Ann.
A little bit. Yes, Betty Ann. Just keep talking.
Could you, is there any chance you could put a couple of those packets back in the library that we could pick up easily on Sunday morning?
Yes. So they will be there for the next week's, and I'll also have this week's. If you didn't pick yours up, you could pick up some more of them. They'll be there on Sunday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, not a problem. Any more questions about that? I encourage you to do it. But that's it. That's all I got today.
Now that was the fun thing. It teaches us how nimble or how not nimble we are as we get a little bit older. But it's a good exercise, I thought. I got a lot of help from a daughter and granddaughter. That was necessary.
Another very good suggestion. If you have grandchildren in town, they're much better at all of this than you are, and you could work with them. But unfortunately, my grandchildren are 19 and 22. So
Yeah, they usually don't sit still for things like this.
don't. And one of them's in Canada. So
And mine are in Boston.
there you go. They're not that hard.
Send them one and have them do it.
There you go. You could all.
Oh,
That's a good idea. They're not.
hey, maybe.
These are arthritic hands, and I was able to do them. We did play around with them at various sizes, and the smaller they get, the harder they are. So you can make these things very big, and you could make them out of felt, in which case it's pretty easy to fill them with things. And they are wonderful Christmas ornaments. Usually for Christmas, they're like red and white, actually, in Scandinavia, I think. But you could do them in Christmas colors and just hang them on your tree. And you can put things in them. That's the whole idea. Daleen.
I ended up looking them up on Google, and there are some major fancy ones with all kinds of designs in the middle of all of the weaving, which I was trying to see. They were supposed to have information about how to do it, but I couldn't find the information anywhere.
Daleen, I think I found videos of almost all of those designs. So I'll look for them if you want to try one. But the reason we chose this one is that it was easy to do.
Right.
To like have you yelling at me for suggesting you weave, these together. But
well, I was just amazed that you could weave something and have all of this fancy stuff in the middle of it.
Yeah, so if you haven't looked, you should look. There are some beautiful designs, and so this is fun. Okay, let's.
Very good.
We have something about a global missions presentation with a question mark on it. Was there someone who was going to pick up on that one, on the global missions? The
decision I think we made is that I'm going to the ELC website. I'm going to show you this, and we're going to walk our way through it. So
okay, good deal.
Anybody who knows, we can just look at it. You can just jump right in there. Let me share the website. So all I really did is just go to ELC, just Google it, ELCA Global Missions, and you can see. Now, part of the reason is we're interested in potentially getting involved in some of this. So let me show you where it is. I'm going to go to that website. All right, hopefully you see it. So I'm just at the ELCA.org, and then I went under their work and looked for global missions. And I thought just because we were talking about Scandinavia this today, you could look at the area that they have where we work, and I picked Europe. So in future weeks, we can look at some of the other areas. And I'm not going to read this to you, but you can go to look at it. I wanted you to see where it is. So you can see that in Europe, there are still things that are being done as mission work in mostly though in Central Eastern Europe. Now, I know nothing about this. I'm just letting you know. I read this. So if someone knows more about it, you are welcome to just jump right in and say something. But I did want you all to see. Yes.
Judy, so I actually work for Global Mission these days.
Great. So you can speak
I'm a
to
volunteer.
This. Yeah. Yes.
But in that paragraph, down below, next paragraph.
Okay, here.
See where it says in blue, teaching in Central Europe. That's been a long-term project of the ELCA in Central Europe, but also I think in Japan. And the general, there's a school in Bratislava. Many people have worked there, and they've expanded it now to Poland. And there have been spots in Hungary, although the teachers usually get paid, and in Hungary they don't have enough money to pay a American teacher right now. But what I've been doing, part of what I've been doing in Budapest is organizing volunteers from their partner synod in Iowa, Northeast Iowa, to come for 3 months to just be an English speaker in the school. So you can just practice English with people as they're learning it. And that's been a ton of fun. I did it for a while, and some other volunteers have done it. And then you can see the Young Adults in Global Mission.
Do you want me to click on these? Anne, did you want me to click on either of these?
I don't know what happens when you click on them.
Well, it's going to take us to another part of their site.
Yeah, I mean, go to Young Adults in Global Mission.
All right.
So Young Adults in Global Mission is sort of like the Peace Corps through the church. And they're all over the world, South Africa, Palestine, maybe Tanzania. There have been some in Madagascar, which is our partner synod, Hungary and Serbia. I know there are some in England and some in Mexico and maybe Argentina. I can't remember all the places, Cambodia. But in each of those places, there are country coordinators who are often pastors, but not always. And they find the sites and places for the volunteers to live. And in Hungary, I can say that each person works in one of the schools helping with English. There are Lutheran schools all over the country in Hungary. And then they also work in one of the agencies helping the Roma, who are the gypsies, who are the subjects of a great deal of racism in Hungary and in many other countries. So the volunteers are working part-time in a school and part-time in an agency that works with Roma. So it's a good program. There's a wonderful couple who are the country coordinators in Hungary. But it might be worth it for St. Luke to find out more about Madagascar and how to support either the country coordinators or the volunteers who go every year. Or if you want to go with me to Hungary, you're always welcome.
Well, you see, I'm clicking around in here partly so that if you notice, if you are interested in more of this, any of you are interested, I just clicked on the one about Madagascar from where I was. And so you can read more about it. And I expect we may be talking about this more in the church, at St. Luke's at least, because I think it's one of the things that our new pastors would like to see us be involved in more in supporting some of these missionary efforts. So learning about it is a great idea. And so we're not really making a presentation on it right now, but I thought if I showed you this, then you can go and explore some of the things in global missions and become more informed. And this is where I found it. So we go into here and there's a whole bunch of things you can pull down, links, and where I went to is where we work. That's how I got to the one on Europe, but we're going to be visiting things that come from other parts, so we can then choose to visit Asia and Pacific, for instance, since we have two sessions on that.
How's this Lutheran World Federation operating now with the pandemic around the world? It's got to be taking a big hit.
Do you mean Lutheran World Relief?
Sure. Lutheran World Action.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard any specifics about that. That's a good question. Well, you know, Lutheran World Federation is working on all kinds of projects, but mostly they can do them on Zoom. I've been watching some webinars on climate refugees, for example. So.
Well, and next week we're talking with Carolyn Schneider, who is having to work online with the Philippines. So maybe she can explain a little bit more about what she knows that's happening because of the pandemic. But well, I'd like to encourage you sometime during this month that we're doing all of these to explore the ELCA's efforts in this area. And then maybe we can ask more questions, especially when we have some of the people that are involved there, between Carolyn Schneider and Dorcas Wang, maybe they can answer some questions too. All right, I'm going to quit sharing. Is that okay? Well, I mean sharing my screen.
I'll turn myself off.
Okay, I think it's back to you, Les.
Okay, and
Let's see.
we're
Getting
ready for music.
Let me see
and
for music.
Pauletta, yeah, I wonder if she's available.
So maybe we're not doing that yet. Are we ahead of schedule?
Yeah, we're ahead of schedule.
Amazing. So we should just chit chat a little bit. We could start some of the other things before we do that, which is the discussion about how do you like these suggestions for the future and what did you learn about today? Would that work, Les?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. We can do that and sing even after that.
Yes. So now the floor is open for you to talk to us, your planning committee.
I wanted to tell Hal tack for his presentation.
Yes,
Yeah.
I second that. Yes, very, very good.
Axamicta.
We always enjoy getting Hal back to talk with us and to meet him at various places. This has been a good chance. Thank you.
One of the things that I noticed when he was showing his slides was a picture of the reindeer. And it reminded me, I went on a cruise with my parents from Copenhagen to the North Cape. And we stopped at some little town where they had the reindeer out there, but the reindeer, evidently they lose their horns at a certain part of the year. So they had them strapped on the reindeer so that you could get pictures taken with them. And, but they kept telling you, don't touch the horns. And they were strapped on like a hat.
Cute.
Yeah, the tourists they're managing the activities, I think, in many of these places for the tourists. It's too bad they probably aren't able to do that this year.
No.
From what I have read, both from cousins and on the media, Norway is pretty well locked down. Norwegians are traveling within the country. Something similar is true for Swedes.
Right.
Yes. Although there have been some pictures from Sweden of some fairly large gatherings, not quite at the Sturgis level, but close to it. And you know, Sweden really took a hit for its approach. It was a more of a laissez-faire approach to dealing with COVID, and their death rate was higher than the surrounding countries. So their attempt at herd immunity was not entirely successful.
Okay. I was scheduled to be on a trip to the Arctic. In fact, I'd be coming back about this week. And of course, we were going to go on the Hurtigruten ship up to the Arctic. But of course, all that was canceled. Yeah. But I also want to Judy, do you remember when we went through Norway that we saw these big cows with a huge udders? Do you remember what they said? That they actually had to put a brassiere on a cow because the udder was so huge. Remember that?
Pictures too. I just, I picking and choosing which ones I was going to use.
Of course, yes. Yeah, of course.
So you probably were going to go to Svalbard, which is about 1,000 miles.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Uh-huh. We were to leave July 26th, I believe. And of course, that was all canceled, but we did not get a refund from the airlines, only a credit, thinking that it will be next year. But we're very dubious whether that will actually happen. So time will tell.
So I see that we have Paulita. I texted her and told her we were running a little ahead of schedule. I hope all of you got the information about the song we're going to sing today, Day by Day. It's in the hymnal, but I sent this morning an email with the music in it in case you don't have the hymnal home. Yes, that's it. And Paulita is going to, I don't know what she's going to do, sing it for us, I guess.
Well, we're going to have Avery come right back. She's, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I wanted to talk about first is Carolina Sandburg. And so if you, Carolina Sandburg is kind of the Fanny Crosby of Scandinavia. So she's written a lot. She wrote a lot of hymns, but she also translated a lot of hymns from other languages into Scandinavian languages so that they could be understood. And it's kind of unique because in the 1800s, that was not something a lot of women did. Women in general wrote under pseudonyms if they did write hymns. Fanny Crosby was pretty much a rarity. So Avery's here now, and our dog, so hopefully she won't interrupt us too much. Can you sit, baby? So the easiest way to sing on Zoom is for you to mute. So if everybody will mute, and then you need to lay down. You need to lay down.
I can do it.
Yes,
Paulita?
our office mate is a little friendly. Yes.
What is the hymn number? I
The
have
hymn
the
number is 790, Day by Day.
My hymnal doesn't go up that high. Mine was printed in 1958.
Oh, well, there you
I had the
go.
old red hymnal, but it only goes
Yeah.
up 400 and some.
So the
There's
song
an
is,
index in the back.
yeah, the song is Day by Day. So you might be able to go to the back and look.
I did. It's not in there.
It is not. Okay, but I don't know what to do. It was written in the 1800s. I would think it'd be in a 1958 hymnal.
Under a different name.
Tommy, I sent it by email today.
Oh,
If you have a Swedish hymnal,
I didn't check it
the
out.
song is
Swedish.
Yeah, Swedish hymnal. It's Blöten dag, ett ögonblick I sönder. Blöten dag. This, yeah.
For those of you, Swedish isn't as good as mine. Haha. BLOTT space EN space DAG.
This is a year-old hymnal.
Is that the oldest one?
For your piano.
Well, Tommy, we did send it in the email this morning. So if you've got access to your email, Judy sent it this morning.
No. See if I can get out of here.
Okay. So if you want to sing along, the best thing for you to do is to mute yourself, and we will stay live, and Avery and I will, well, she'll play and I'll sing unless she feels like joining in and singing too. Okay?
Okay. Day by day, your mercies, Lord, attend me, bringing comfort to my anxious soul. Day by day, the blessings, Lord, you send me, draw me nearer to my happy goal. Love divine beyond the mortal measure brings to naught the burdens of my quest. Savior, lead me to the home I treasure, where at last I'll find eternal
Day by day, I know you will provide me strength to serve and wisdom to obey. I will seek your loving will to guide me o'er the paths I struggle day by day. I will fear no evil of the morrow. I will trust in your enduring grace. Savior, help me bear life's pain and sorrow, till in glory I behold your face. Oh, what joy to know that you are near me, when my burdens grow too great to bear. Oh, what joy to know that you will hear me, when I come, oh Lord, to you in prayer. Day by day, no matter what betide me, you will hold me ever in your hand. Savior, with your presence here to guide me, I will reach at last the promised land.
So one last thing about Carolina Sandell Berg is that she was one of the very first women to present a hymn that was allowed to be presented directly to the king. So that is something that did not happen before, and she had several benefactors who allowed for that to go forward. I hope you all enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank
you. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Very good. Thank you.
Hi, Avery.
Hi, Amy.
Okay, so before we go, we're going to show you a video at the very end, which we intend to use as a closing every time, which is Amazing Grace sung from 50 countries who are grappling with the COVID. But it's quite inspiring. But I want to make sure that we heard from everyone, because the committee that plans these is meeting tomorrow again. So if you have suggestions for us, any of you who have pictures from any of the sites that we are going to be visiting next week, the Philippines, the following week, the Navajo Nation, the last week, China, please get them to me. Karen, I could not read your stick. I got your photos, but I could not read it.
Oh, really? Well, leave it at the church office and I'll pick it up again and see what I can do.
Okay, thank you. I think those are all from China, right? So we have time to recover.
Yes, they were all from Beijing, pretty much.
Thank you. Or from Asia, right? So other suggestions you have? The plan is for you to pick up these packets. I email you other stuff. You should try to get the food so you can eat with us. You should try to print the stuff for doing the crafts and participate with it. I can't make you do any of these things, but this gives you the full experience of Vacation Bible School.
Judy?
Yes.
Thank you.
So when Chuck made the poster, he said on it that I was presenting about the Navajo.
Yes.
But in fact, the director of the Navajo Evangelical Lutheran Mission is going to come on.
Wonderful.
So she'll do a lot better job than me, and she can really talk with us about the school. We have a school there and a church, and they're doing a lot of feeding of people right now. So
that's fabulous. Anne, if you could make sure to get the we need to make sure we get the link to this person, and we want to give credit to her. So to her,
Yes, yeah.
put that to
Pastor Kate Adelman. And I guess I sent everything to Krista, but
well, that's fine. Krista will be back, and we'll get that information then. That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other thoughts from any of the rest of you as we close down on this, on what we did, what we heard today?
Very well done. Very well done.
Thank you.
Yes, we want to thank Pastor Hal and Shirley for being here with us. And I enjoy any presentation on Scandinavia, so I really enjoy it.
So by the way, next week when we're doing the Philippines, Angie is heavily involved with us. She has crafts and to show you how to do the crafts. And she's going to help us with teaching words, and she has a wonderful collection of recipes that you could try to make in advance to eat with us. So this will be a great chance for you to get to talk to Angie more, just as someone in the office. So.
Good.
Very good.
I invite more people. I'm glad to have more people. Pastor Hal, if you think anyone from St. Paul's would like to join us, just pass on the information. We're glad to have you. And if you know some more people that you would like to invite, we certainly would love to have more people attend.
Judy?
Yes.
Are you going to try to record these so that we could share them, since I'm going to be missing some of these others because of previous conflicts?
Yes, I am actually recording, maybe not every bit of it, but I've recorded a lot of this one. I will make sure to record the presentations as the critical parts. I did a sample the other night of a rehearsal, and it was very large, so
Okay.
that's all I'm worried about. But then I will do it. I will do it, and I'll see. But I'll make sure to get the presenters at least.
Because I would definitely like to see that, and I'm just sorry that I've got conflicts.
Yes, I heard that, and there were several people who expressed interest in getting them recorded. This will be the first time I'll have really. I did do it, and I converted it as it does, and I can share a link to it. I just have to figure out where I'm going to put it. But
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we can work this out.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure the church has a place for us to.
We have 17 people.
There's 17 participants.
We have 17 people.
Yes, there are 2 people in several of these spaces. 18, 19, 20, 21. There's I think I was expecting between 20 and 25 each week. And there were some differences that some people told me they could not be here for all of them. So 25.
It would be interesting also to.
I had a friend that was here most of the time, but she didn't want to be on camera. But she was sitting here listening.
Good. I hope she enjoyed it.
She did.
Dick, did you start to say something?
Yeah, it would be interesting for us to find out how the other countries, the churches in the other countries are doing their services during this pandemic. Are they doing online? And if they are, how are they doing it, and so forth? If there's any way for us to follow up on that, to see whether we could learn something from maybe the way they are participating with maintaining their distance.
I know that, and Ann could speak to this, I know that Holy Cross is doing them on Zoom, and the people that are joining the service can actually interact then.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can find out in the other countries too. The Scandinavian countries we're going to, and the Philippines, and so forth. And so we see whether the other countries are participating. Many of them we find out are more computer friendly than we are. When we finally get to them, we realize that they know more about it than we do.
We know what they're doing in Scandinavia as far as their services.
Hal, have you heard from any of your colleagues?
You know, I haven't. I'm uncertain, but Les's observation about the technical savvy of people over there. But you give me something to check out just for my own information. I plan to do that.
Good, thank you.
Let us know. Let us know what you find out, Pastor.
Will do.
In Hungary, they had mostly pre-taped services. I've watched several of them just to try to keep up with my Hungarian a little bit. They all opened up much more quickly than we have. You know, they went back to church, I think, by Pentecost. So, especially in the rural areas, Budapest waited a little bit longer, but even now they're back meeting together.
Are they using social distancing or masks or not?
I don't think they have to, because they've had such a low number of cases. I mean, because they got their cases under control very quickly.
Well, we have hope then.
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
We always can have hope.
Can I say something about Holy Cross? I've been surprised. I don't have a lot of patience for watching worship service on TV, you know, on the computer. I get distracted. I do other things. I don't know. That's just me. I enjoy the music and I try to focus on the sermons, but I get distracted. Holy Cross has done it on Zoom right from the beginning. And early on, they decided that the Holy Spirit could work digitally. So we've always had communion. As the weeks have gone by and we've gotten better at it, we say more of the responses. So the congregation is there and can contribute to the prayers, or, you know, Lord be with you and also with you, those kinds of things. The Lord's Prayer we all say together. And then we have coffee hour and everybody checks in. And I've been amazed by how we've all actually gotten to know each other better, because they've made the Zoom service so participatory. So, you know, I knew a lot of people at Holy Cross, but there are a lot of people I've gotten to know. There are even some new people who have arrived since we've been on Zoom. The other thing that happens is old members who moved away have come, or extended family of members come. So a friend came from Hungary one week and another friend from El Salvador one week. You know, it's just been interesting. And I'm not sure all of what you've been doing at St. Luke. I have really appreciated the continuously improving interactive Zoom worship. Mm-hmm. You know, at first it was a little clumsy and it has its moments, but the connection with the people is wonderful.
It's even better to be in the sanctuary and to see your pastor.
I don't know. I think it's okay because we can see his face, you know. He is in the sanctuary. So we get to see the banners and stuff, but I don't know. It's okay.
Well, you can come and visit us, Anne, on Saturday or Sunday.
Well, maybe I will one of these weeks.
Okay. I think I'm going to share this final video with you, and then before we quit, you can see this. I think you're going to like it.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. What way
ciego más, hoy miro yo. Perdutor salvo soy.
I'm checking to see if you can hear it.
Froze? Froze, yeah.
Hearing it?
Yeah.
Click the arrow, click in the lower left.
It was giving me error messages, so I wanted to make sure you could hear it before. I'll continue it then.
I see.
Very good.
So much has changed in our world lately.
疫情中这么多人失去生命，显明了生命的脆弱与短暂。
Pero la asombrosa gracia y amor de Jesús es más fuerte que la vida y la muerte.
Wo auch immer du bist, ruf seinen Namen an. Jesus.
Jésus. Isa Masih. Jesucristo.
Yeshua. Jesus.
Don't wait another day.
Time and stuff.
Yep, yep. Mm-hmm.
Can you see us?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I hope you found that inspirational.
We got it.
Amazing.